I think that we have to set precedent. If we don't, if we just give these people a pass, if we show them that there's, the Constitution, the Constitution's not absolute, that we're going to have future potential tyrants that will make Donald Trump look like a preschooler. People are paying attention to this. The world's paying attention to it. Other wannabe fascist dictators are paying attention to it. I think that he committed an insurrection. He has blood on his hands. He should be ineligible to hold office ever again. And I fully support the work here in Colorado that we're doing to keep him off the ballot.
Welcome to the podcast, Mr. John. I put Pandora here. Autocorrect. John Padora. How's it going for you today?
Going well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. We've entered the winter months, and that means it's safe for me and my ginger skin to go outside. But it's we're in the winter. It's fun up here in North during the winter. You are running against Isaac McCorkle and Karen Breslin in the Democratic primary, and if you win the primary, you'll be running against one of the 7 Republicans for the seat vacated by Ken Buck. Can you tell me what motivated you to want to run for Congress in Colorado?
Sure thing. So I have been a political activist for the last 15 years. I have a lot of experience in the addiction recovery advocacy world, in advocating for environmental issues, advocating for social justice issues, anti-war activism, things of that nature. A little over 10 years ago, I started to get involved when I lived in southeastern Pennsylvania with political campaigns and issue-based campaigns. One thing kind of led to the next, and I ended up running for state representative unsuccessfully, but I learned a boatload, and I learned so much that I didn't want to stop. So I've been coming to Colorado for quite a long time, 28 years. My family moved here 3 years ago, and we kind of plugged right in. The first thing I did was get involved with the local political networks out here. I worked as field director on a local campaign last year, and that's primarily because I look at what's going on in Washington. I look at what's going on across our nation. I have 3 young children. I don't see a very good promising future for them. I see a planet burning. I see an out-of-control Republican Party that, seeks to oppress women and derail women's rights. I see that we always have enough money for war, but we never have enough money to fix some of the issues within our own communities. And I just felt like I can't sit on the sideline. I need to be active. I need to be out there in my community. I need to be advocating for change. And for me, the best way to do that is the vessel of running for office.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I can't disagree with any of that stuff. I think that currently our political situation is out of control. Our environment, specifically here, I'm here in California right now. We experience wildfires every year. We were experiencing a pretty extreme drought for quite a while until probably like 2 years ago. And even then, when we finally got some water, it dumped. And I myself here at my house had 6 trees actually fall on my property during that crazy winter storm. So it at least seems to me as though the climate is definitely becoming a lot more complicated and a lot more extreme. So I like a lot of that. That sounds great. So what makes you the best choice out of Karen Breslin and Isaac McCorkle and yourself to run for the Democrats against the eventual winner of the Republican primary?
Sure, that's a great question. What sets me apart is I'm an unconventional Democrat. I was a lifetime registered unaffiliated voter until the rise of Donald Trump in 2016. I grew up in the rural expanses of America my entire life. Growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather on the farm. My father was a carpenter. My mother was a nurse. I was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is a heavily blue-collar economy community that's heavily dependent on agriculture and coal mining. I know how to communicate with conservative folks because I come from that background, my family being in those areas and my neighbors for so long. What I see happen quite often is I see Democrats that adopt this kind of universal blue dog ideology where they're kind of just parroting, talking points over and over and over again. The district that I'm running in is a traditionally conservative district. It is Colorado's most Republican district. And I think it's because a lot of the folks, there's like this intersection between the rural expanses, the suburban sprawl that's kind of happening, and the rapidly developing urban sections. We cannot win this district with urban blue dog Democratic politics. We need somebody like myself who is a blue collar manufacturing engineer. I'm an environmental scientist. Like I said, I grew up, with my father building homes and my grandfather on the farm. I understand a lot of these complex socioeconomic issues that rural America is dealing with. And we need somebody that can go out into these areas and talk with independent voters, that can talk with Republican voters. And to be honest, Mr. McCorkle has ran the last 2 cycles. He has been the Democratic nominee, and he's failed to turn the needle forward. He produced the same election result in 2020 that he did in 2022. It's time to do something different. It's time to communicate differently. It's time for a new message. It's time for a new candidate. As far as contrasting myself to my other primary opponents, I have over a decade of experience on political campaigns, which is something that neither of them have. I specialize in micro-targeting. So we use all kinds of algorithmic software and things to really get out into our communities and do the grassroots work to knock on people's doors, to identify pockets of voters and what their biggest issues are. So I have this kind of political strategy tuned into myself, and I have a really unique background. And as I said, I position myself as an unconventional Democrat, which is appealing to a district where 46% of our registered voters are unaffiliated. And that's what I think really sets me apart from my primary opponents.
Yeah, I like that. I think that we learned in 2016 when Hillary took that kind of opinion of the right-wing voter and the independent voter and, kind of the whole deplorable issue where I think she really lost the election there. I think that she lost not just independents and maybe left-leaning conservatives at that point that were maybe not interested in Donald Trump, but I think that she lost some people in the progressive movement and even on the moderate Democrats, because if you're gonna come out here and you're going to tell Americans that they don't know what they're talking about and that they should just vote for the person that you want them to vote for, then they really don't have a reason to vote for you, and it shows that you're completely out of touch with your voter base. So I think that's a great way to go about things, really looking at your constituents, regardless of their red, blue, whatever, political affiliation they have, and what they want, what's important to them, because we live in a country that's almost evenly divided. It's a little bit heavier on the Democrat side, but you can't get rid of these people. And it wouldn't be appropriate to even talk about that. But you can't just ask them to move. They're going to live here, and you don't want to live in a broken home with somebody that's very unhappy with the system that they live in. You want to have as close to a bipartisan system that both makes progress for those of us that are very, very intensely into it, and for those people that maybe are looking for more traditional values and want to hang on to things like the traditional family. So I like what you're saying there, and especially about the targeting. I heard somebody speaking on a stream the other day about doing canvassing in Ohio and how they were using registration information to find voters that, due to the purchases they made, showed that they were more on the left-leaning Democrat, the stuff that they consumed online as far as like videos and stuff, that they were more Democratic, and but they weren't voting. And I like that the canvassing was much more targeted towards people that weren't voting. That's obviously a huge problem in our society right now. It's a lot of us have opinions, but even myself until up not 2016, probably just a couple of years into Trump's presidency, did I start becoming really politically activated and start researching and getting into all this stuff. And that's when I realized that there is a large portion of our society that has opinions on everything from immigration, the economy, to abortion, that don't actually go out and vote once they talk about it. So I like hearing about really targeting specific people when it comes to voting, because obviously some of us are set in our ways, but there's a lot of people out there that may still be, trying to figure out what's going on in this political society. So as far as Republican primaries go, maybe you can tell me this, it seems like it's really crowded on the Republican side in your district. Is there anyone in that primary that you feel would be best to face I mean, somebody like Lauren Boebert seems like you'd have like a lot of ammo with all the controversy surrounding her interactions, the Beetlejuice incident, the recent domestic violence incident with her ex-husband, where it looks like her ex-husband is actually going to most likely be prosecuted. Being that I grew up in a trailer park, I can tell you, I've seen those situations. Lauren Boebert seems like she could have grown up right next to me. So is she who you'd like to see in the election, or do you see someone else as being a better person to face?
So, for starters, I think there's actually 11 Republican candidates that have stepped
Jesus.
in and actually filed paperwork. And I'll tell you why. So, an open Republican seat, a safe Republican seat, this is an R plus 12 district, which means that,
Mm-hmm.
Republicans outnumber Democratic registration by 12%. So they view this as a traditionally safe district. An open district does not come up too often. So all the vultures that, and all the opportunists have their claws out and they're just looking to get a piece of the pie. Um, I don't really care who I run against because I've been paying attention to all of my potential opponents, and I can tell you that they're all extremists. They're
Mm-hmm.
all, hardcore right leaning people that support Donald Trump, and that is something that I can't get behind. Lauren Boebert has been a blessing and a curse to our state because to this when I was running, I launched this campaign in May of 2023 with the plan to take on Ken Buck and his brand of conservatism. He threw us a wrench when he announced retirement, and she really threw us a wrench when she entered the race. What that has done is, since she has launched her campaign here, we've received thousands of donations from all 50 states. We have just been on the ground grinding completely, expanding our campaign. She's really given us the national recognition that we needed to flip a really, really conservative district. So she is somebody that I would prefer to run against because I can really contrast myself as being the rational, pro-family. Like I can market myself to folks that I'm pro-family, that I have people that have conservative values, even though I tend to identify more progressive and liberal than others. I think a lot of folks in this district, my message and my background and my family values will resonate with those folks. When I can contrast that to someone as toxic as Lauren Boebert, it greatly improves our chances. But like I said, make no mistake that all the other folks in this race are extremists, and our goal is to defeat extremism. So I'm ready to take on whoever the candidate is, and we'll let the Republican Party and their dysfunction sort that out. We'll let them eviscerate themselves. We'll let them, attack each other and write our campaign ads. We'll let them expend all their money and resources battling it out with each other. Well, we have a much more united front, and we can work on really coalescing community-based support while they're working on picking each other apart, to see who gets a piece of the gravy train.
That's a great point. Did you get any donations from Ryan Reynolds or Barbara Streisand?
I did actually. Ryan Reynolds, right? So this is how it happened. She made a tweet or sent a video out saying, I forget, she might have been on the news. The only
Mm-hmm.
reason that I'm losing this race is because all the dark Hollywood elites are, funding a campaign against me. So somebody actually tagged us on Twitter and said, "Hey, Barbara Streisand and Ryan Reynolds, can you help out John Padora here in Eastern Colorado?" And not even 20 minutes later, we saw a donation come through. So I think we're
Amazing.
coalescing a lot of that support. We've had quite a few of the good activist folks in Hollywood rally behind us and support us. And I think that that's only going to continue to grow.
Awesome. That's actually, it's so funny because when you hear about the Republicans talking about how they're unhappy that she's come over to District 4, I guess that's one of those things that at least a person like myself that's, still working on their education when it comes to politics and how all this stuff works, that her coming over there actually is a huge detriment to to the Republican political party because she brings not only her controversy but also she brings attention from specifically people that want to get involved. I thought it was hilarious that she talked about how the reason she had to run from her former district was because of Ryan Reynolds and Barbara Streisand, and then it comes out that out of the some odd $1 million that he got over there, Ryan Reynolds had put in 1,000 and Streisand had put in 1,500. It's really just kind of shows where the Republican mindset is for how far they can push people with hate, fear, and vitriol without it having to be true. And what people will believe. I just actually finished reading 1984 again. I really enjoy that. I just started on A Brave New World because I like to get both sides. And I think that there's something to the whole idea of controlled insanity. I think that you have a party right now on the right where when they hold up five fingers and they tell you they're holding up four, they expect their constituents to agree. They expect their constituents to say, regardless, I mean, you see it all the time with Trump right now. The election looks like there was not enough legitimate fraud for it to have been in any way compromised. And you show them all the evidence and they go, yeah, but that's actually the point. The fact that you can't find the evidence is the reason that it's rigged. It's the double speak. So do you think that she actually has a chance to win? Because from what you're saying here, I think at least on the candidate side, they're probably looking at her as a detriment and somebody that's really just bringing nothing but negativity. But from what I'm saying with voters, the voters don't seem to be as maybe knowledgeable or as involved in actual politics. So they really look at things from the outside as being almost, American Idol, who's the prettiest, who's got the most mocking thing that they can say. Do you think she has a chance to win the primary over there?
Yeah, so you made some really good points in all of that. We live, or essentially the Republican Party lives in a parallel universe. They have created this alternate reality that exists in on somebody's TV on the other side of the galaxy. I can't even begin to rationalize what's happening. Her Republican opponents are afraid of her. They're afraid of her because she brings to the table $1.5 million cash on hand. None of them have raised that money. She just got endorsed by Speaker Johnson, and they also announced that they're going to be treating her candidacy as an incumbency, meaning that they're going to be funding her during the primary. So she has all the momentum behind her. I think she absolutely has a chance to win, and I'll tell you why. The Republican primary field is so diluted, so every additional Republican that enters will pull a small percentage of votes. But some of these folks outside of their primary communities, they don't have huge connections. They don't have national or statewide name recognition. Lauren Boebert is a staple in America, whether you like her or not. Everybody in every corner of this country knows her, meaning that she'll pull national funding. She'll pull, dark money. She'll pull the House GOP support behind her. And I think that what we're going to end up seeing is that the vote pool during the primary is going to be diluted enough that she is just maximizing her chances to win. And her political advisors aren't as dumb as you think. They came to this conclusion from multiple fronts. They know exactly what they're doing. They threw a wrench into all the Republican primary candidates. You can see how their whole messaging has just pivoted and flip-flopped, and some of them haven't even said anything because they don't know how to respond. She is a legitimate threat to the Republican primary field. She's a legitimate threat to Colorado, and she's a legitimate threat to our country. And our campaign is going to do whatever we can to defeat her and make sure that she does not represent Colorado. Because I agree that there are folks from all over this district that aren't as politically educated as some of the other folks. And some people don't even know, oh, I just get to vote for Lauren Boebert now. She's representing Colorado. Cool, awesome. I like her. She says some really funny things. She's pretty hot. I think that's the mentality for a lot of folks. So yes, I do think she has a very, very good chance of winning. If the Republicans were smart, they would rally around some of the more old school conservative folks that are running here because they would have a much better chance. But retracting that statement, the Republican Party is not intelligent. If you've watched what they've done over the last couple of years, they haven't found a centrist platform. They haven't moderated their approach. They've doubled down on their extremism, and they've lost time and time and time again. And I think that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to flip CD4 end to end Boebert's political career once and for all.
That's extremely well said. I like that. That's really getting to the point of what it is. And I think that progressives, I was just talking about this on stream the other day. I remember having some very left-leaning political ideologies and then listening to my bosses at work talk about how the left has always kind of just been a pushover. We've always just allowed that extremism to kind of push us off into the just be polite. What is it Obama always said? When they go low, we go high, you know? And I think that there is a very good way of both still having your values and sticking to those values, but also pointing out on the right where they lack those values and that they have chosen to not only embrace them, but to exaggerate them, to make it even more bombastic and more crazy. And when I look at somebody like Lauren Boebert, I almost see a pop culture figure, like somebody that's in pop music, like a Britney Spears. Yeah. It's like, you don't have to be, you know, no offense to Britney, you don't have to be the greatest singer. You don't have to be, you know, the best lyricist. We're going to put the beat behind you. We're going to give you dancers. We're going to give you choreography. We're going to, you know, give you all the best of everything. And all you have to do is stand up there and look pretty. And I think that really says something about American society. And in many ways, whether Hillary came out and just straight up said it, the right thinks it. You know, they feel that their voter, as Donald Trump said, he loves the poorly educated, is not very well educated. And if I was on the right, I would be incensed by the fact that the people that are supposed to represent me think that I am dumb enough to go out and vote for somebody like Lauren Boebert when it's very apparent that she doesn't have the skills necessary to run a McDonald's, much less a district. So I really think that you're hitting the nail on the head there. And it's obviously, in my opinion, something all voters, not just on the right, but the left, should be concerned about. I think that they're making a mockery of what it takes to be a politician. You know, we've always had bad opinions of the people running our state, but more and more I'm trying to convince people that not everybody that's involved in politics is just this, you know, shady, bad person that takes in money from, you know, big oil and stuff, that there are people that really want to see us do better. Speaking of the far right, let's talk about something that's a little bit closer to home with you guys over there in Colorado. Trump obviously was just removed from the Colorado ballot. I just saw today that the U.S. Supreme Court has accepted that they are going to look into that. My personal opinion, and as I spoke about a little bit earlier, is I know a little bit about the 14th Amendment, third article, and Trump's removal using it, going back to Jefferson Davis, when he was allowed to get out of his trial for his criminality during the Confederacy due to the 14th Amendment, third article, that you know, there was precedent set there for that. So I do believe, in my opinion, not being a constitutional lawyer, that it seems constitutionally correct for him to be removed from the ballot. I think, you know, whether or not we talk about whether or not it's the best for the country is a whole nother question. But if we're just talking specifically about the Constitution, I think that it is the correct thing to do. On the other hand, I do not think that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of doing so. Do you think it's constitutionally correct? And do you think it's good for America if we remove Donald Trump from the ballot?
That is a complex question. I do believe that it's constitutionally correct. I think that we have to set precedent. If we don't, if we just give these people a pass, if we show them that there's, you know, the Constitution, the Constitution's not absolute, that we're going to have future potential tyrants that will make Donald Trump look like a preschooler. People are paying attention to this. The world's paying attention to it. Other wannabe fascist dictators are paying attention to it. I think that he committed an insurrection. He has blood on his hands. He should be ineligible to hold office ever again. And I fully support the work here in Colorado that we're doing to keep him off the ballot. Whether it's good for the country is a completely different concept, because I was under the impression, and I still am, that we're going to defeat Donald Trump whether he's on the ballot or off the ballot. I played an instrumental role in defeating Donald Trump with my friends in Pennsylvania in 2020. I know they're going to do it again. I know that we're going to defeat him here in Colorado, and I know that most of the other swing states that we need are going to defeat Donald Trump. So whether it's good for the country or not, like if we just beat him outright, I don't know. I don't even know if that's a question anymore, because I think that we're at the point now where so many Republican voters, they don't recognize legitimate victories and defeats anymore. If we legitimately defeat him, oh, you cheated. If we remove him from the ballot, oh, you cheated. I think we've passed the inflection point where our country is dangerously divided, to the point where I worry about the possibilities of a second civil war or some type of domestic conflict here. I think we need to do whatever to send a precedent and a message to Donald Trump and all his sycophants, that he doesn't deserve to be on the ballot, that he doesn't deserve to hold office. But we just need to make sure that folks across the country are activating to stand up and preserve our imperfect democracy.
Yeah, and I'm sure you heard Nikki Haley the other day talking about pardoning Trump if she were to be elected, and I believe one of the things she said was that putting him in jail and leaving him in jail would just divide the country, and I'm just not sure if Nikki Haley is aware of reality. The country is divided as it is, and if he doesn't go to jail, then you're going to have the left upset. You're going to have me upset. I've read all four of those indictments in depth.
Sure.
The evidence seems overwhelming.
Yes, it does.
And then if you let him out of prison, that's going to just enrage the left. If you put him in prison, the right's going to be upset, but the right's going to be upset no matter what. The right seems at this point to be at like the needles in the red for the right. There is no coming down off this anger. They're like addicted to the hate and the anger. And as a person that in my life has gotten mad once or twice because I'm a ginger, okay, I can tell you, it don't feel good after you come down. You feel great when you're angry and you're yelling and you're telling people how mad you are about things, and you're pointing out all the flaws in society and why you don't like what's going on. But the moment that, it all kind of comes down and you have to come back to reality, it doesn't feel good anymore. And it's a very addictive feeling. And I think that's what you see on the right. And I think that Nikki Haley is obviously pandering. That's one of the scary parts about the right now, is that they have no ability to even speak their own actual thoughts. When you hear her answering the questions on the Civil War, it's like, it was about slavery, Nikki Haley. She's an intelligent human being. I've seen her talk multiple times. She is a very intelligent person. And for her to sit there and you can watch the thoughts on her face, sit there and act like how do I get around saying that this is slavery? We're really at a point with the right where I don't think that anything that we do, even if we were to just let Donald Trump walk through the door and become president again, is going to take them down off that ledge. They are angry and they're feeling themselves. So I hope that we can get away from that. And I think you're right, whether or not it's a bad for America or good for America. I think that might be a moot point at this time. So let's take a look. As far as your primary candidates on the other side, other than Lauren Boebert, I actually read a quote from Mr. Richard Holtorf. Am I saying his name right? Richard Holtorf?
Yes, you are.
Okay. And he had said he is currently trying to save Colorado from the progressive California left. Now, I'm from California. I've lived in California my entire life. I love living here. I think it's an amazing place. We have great weather. We have beaches. We have forests. It's, in my opinion, my humble opinion, the best place you can live in America. I think California is also constantly at the forefront of progress, and that kind of, at least on the right, drives people a little nuts. A lot of things that start here in California do find their ways to other parts of the country because of the success we have with them. It's not as though these are just bad ideas that get forced on the rest of the country. A lot of what we do here in California ends up being successful, and then the other states take it up and move with it because it's the intelligent thing to do, in my opinion. Do you see anything in California that you'd like to see more in Colorado?
That's a difficult question here. There is how do I phrase this? There is a hardcore pride here in Colorado of this kind of old school Western progressive culture that is kind of, at the intersection of old school conservative politics. So there's like people don't take too kindly in Colorado to even more liberal people to like Californian politics navigating into Colorado. That being said, Colorado, I believe, is also a progressive leader. I think we've led the country on drug policy. You know, we've the marijuana legalization, the psychedelic legalization that's taken place over the last couple of years is just at the forefront. I think California gets a really bad rap. I think there's so many complex socioeconomic issues going on there. The homelessness, the higher marginal tax rates, things like that. That like everybody kind of just scapegoats that onto, oh, it's a liberal state and that's why it's happening. I don't see that at all. I do see California being, a progressive leader nationally for other states to look to. I like a lot of the policies that Gavin Newsom has put forth, even though I tend to shy away a little bit from his corporate affiliation, I guess you would call it. But I don't know if there's anything specifically I would like to see from California make its way here to Colorado. I think we're really walking the line in tandem with each other to push for progressive policy. What I would like to see more is a little bit of collaboration, whether it's on environmental issues, water availability. I have some really good ideas for, collaborating and building a desalination plant from Colorado that pipes water, in California that pipes water from California into Colorado to fill up some of our eastern plain basins, and how we could economically benefit California by doing that, and they could benefit our states and being a heavily agricultural state and things like that. I would just like to see more collaboration between Colorado and California, because we have Colorado and then we have, Utah. So we're divided by that kind of unorthodox state, but I think we're a lot closer than people believe we are ideologically. And I think that we can learn a lot of things from each other. And I would love to see our politicians spend more time communicating about some of the issues. Colorado has a really high homeless population, the same as California. And I just think there's a lot of things that we could learn from each other. But I think that each state needs to preserve its own culture, its own identity, while learning from each other mutually at the same time.
Yeah, I like that. I think that competition's great, and I've made it my point to make sure to be proud of the state that I live in, because I've always been proud of California. One of the things I think we do on the left is we kind of do a little bit of debasement of our own, cultures, and kind of, oh, well, yeah, actually, we do a lot of bad things. There's a lot of homeless, and we kind of, like I said before, we've kind of been the party of, yeah, let people kind of push us around a little bit on that stuff. But I like competition, and I like that you are proud of being from Colorado, and that you stick up for Colorado, and you say you like so much about Colorado. That doesn't offend me. Like,
Sure.
that's one of the things that I think is wrong with the United States right now, is that we don't feel like we can have pride in the things that we like without being offended by other people being proud of the things that they like. And then when you get to the collaboration and you talk about actually like getting on each other's level and saying, yeah, I'm proud to be from California, you're proud to be from Colorado, let's work together and let's talk about, figuring some of these things out. I was just in San Francisco not too long ago. I can tell you that the homeless issue in San Francisco is pretty bad. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that there are problems and issues that we need to work on. And if you guys over in Colorado are experiencing something similar, then we should be getting together and we should be talking about, different ideas. The human beings as a whole, I've always said we're somewhere between ants and cats. As far as cats, we're very independent. We don't need nobody, and all this stuff until we need to be fed. But we're also very ant oriented, and that is, we work best when there's a lot of us working together, coming together with different ideas, and having different viewpoints on the world. And being that we come from these different cultures, even within America, Colorado's culture is a lot different than California's culture. You're going to have different viewpoints on how to handle something like homelessness. You just said something very important to me, and that was that you want to see water coming from California and going to Colorado. As I understand it, most of the water is coming from Colorado and coming to California. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it is essentially through the Colorado River.
Yeah, so just in this conversation we're having here to get today, I'm learning something, and that is Colorado has an idea about maybe bringing that water from California to Colorado. That's a huge thing because that's something that I never think of because all I think of is, hey, you give us water. Why would we give
Mm-hmm.
you water? And so
Yeah.
so having more, and this is why it's so important to work across the aisle, is that having more collaboration between states, but also still having this real pride in where you come from and what your states have done to help forward the bigger idea of the United States being the greatest country in the world and really being a world leader. As far as California and what we're really proud of. Obviously, here in California with Silicon Valley, we're Silicon Valley, Silicon as well. We're real huge on tech. When it comes to the future of America, I myself believe there is nothing more important than the semiconductor industry. In my opinion, semiconductors will be a part of the next industrial revolution. We had coal, we had gas, we had electronics and nuclear, and then we had internet and renewable energy. I believe the next thing that we're going to be looking at is semiconductors and AI. And even when you look at things like securing American economy by reducing our dependence on foreign countries like Taiwan, who produces 90% of the high-end semiconductors that we need in our society, not to mention the 67% of just regular semiconductors that we all saw exactly how important they were during COVID. We're going to bring back that semi-production to the United States of America, and I think that's incredibly important. Biden's administration has enacted the Chips and Science Act, and that kind of got the ball rolling in the right direction. And then Colorado, in their 5th district, I believe it's Microchip is the name of the company, just received, I think, the largest portion so far of the subsidies for the government with a $90 million contract from the government. Do you think focusing on semiconductor production is the right move for Colorado and America as a country?
Yes, I do. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, I am a manufacturing engineer. I've spent
Yeah.
the last 15 years kind of sourcing materials, producing precision instruments, everything from spinal implants to knee replacements to satellite cooling components to submarine noise suppression systems. You think of it, I've been involved with it. I have subcontracted for companies like Microchip, even Microchip in the past before. I can tell you that there's a massive trickle down effect to smaller companies like what I work for when things like that happen. They subcontract a lot of their work out to precision manufacturers all over the country. And that's because it's economically more beneficial for them to do that. They can rely on niche manufacturing. Every manufacturer has their own niche and their own specialization. So when Microchip gets a huge grant like that, that trickles down to mom and pop shops and smaller size corporations and LLCs all over the country. One of my biggest platforms that I'm running on is to resuscitate American manufacturing. And what I mean by that is every single thing that we consume day in and day out needs to be made here in America again. The rural expanses of America are suffering. They don't want these big tech sectors. I've heard some of the conversation, yeah, we're going to bring big tech hubs to rural America. They don't want that. They're predominantly blue collar. If we can incentivize manufacturers to open up shops in rural America, we can put people back to work. We can give them the blue collar jobs. We can rebuild our economy from the ground up. We can make sure that we're standing up to autocratic nations like China, where who knows what they're going to do, whether they're going to invade Taiwan and our semiconductor supply is going to dry up. We need to make sure that we are making everything in America, that we are completely self-sufficient. Everything for our military, for our day-to-day lives, for our robots, for our vehicles, for our airplanes, for mass transportation. We need to be making that here. So I absolutely think that the Biden administration Semiconductor Act will jumpstart everything. But I think that we haven't had enough talk about how do we actually rebuild America. America, in my opinion, became one of the greatest nations on the planet because we were self-reliant. We had steel, we were the largest steel producer in the world. Growing up in steel country in southeastern Pennsylvania, I can tell you that that's all but dried up. A large portion of my job as a manufacturing engineer is sourcing material. We have to source these really advanced, specialized materials that have really critical certifications. And we're restricted to only being able to purchase a lot of those from NATO countries because a lot of those components end up on our subs, on our military aircraft, and we want to make sure that we're not being sabotaged with faulty material by adversarial nations. We need to get back to making that material here. So you can look at anything sitting in front of you on any given day. We need to rebuild that in America. We need to pay good union wages. That's how we rebuild the middle class. That's how we save our country and make sure that we have a supply chain that is actually in the 21st century.
Yeah, man, that sounds good, don't it? Like, I mean, when you talk about American and American pride, that's really when you want to talk about like the top level of where we've been as a country is when we were producing things ourselves, and that's a misconception about the left. Is people think that that's not a point of pride. The left isn't proud of being American, and I think that's a complete falsehood. I've never met a Democrat or a progressive or a socialist, if you want, you can go as far as you want down the road, that has ever not been proud of America. I think that just the left sees it as that we sometimes lack progress, that you can't completely depend on the ways of the traditional ways to keep moving us into the future. These other countries, China, Europe's lagging a little bit, but they all want to move forward. And when you talk about green energy, when you talk about semiconductors, at this point right now, China is in debt because they're putting so much money into semiconductors. They are importing, and let me tell you, that's going to be a great reason for them to invade Taiwan. So we need to do our best to be producing all those semiconductors here in the United States. So if something like that does happen, we have the option. It's not that America shouldn't stand up. We should stand up for people that need our help. But it shouldn't be forced. It shouldn't be because we need to defend Taiwan, because we need those semiconductors. It should be because we morally believe that it's the right thing to do. And if we don't bring back semiconductor, because we used to do that right here in America, we don't bring that back over here, we're going to find ourselves in a position one day. We've already got the conflict in Israel. We've already got the conflict in Ukraine. We don't need that conflict in Taiwan right now. That would stretch us to a point where we are so thin that our competitors in the world, because I don't look as enemies, I look at the rest of the world as competitors. They're going to be really excited to see us involved in 3 different military engagements. So bringing back that semiconductor here to America, I think is huge. I think I could literally make an entire podcast just on the Chips and Science Act.
Seriously.
It's one of, in my opinion, one of the biggest pieces, for being as small as of legislation that has been produced in the last 50 years, easy.
Absolutely.
And it's going to lead America into the future. So as far as that goes, I've done a lot of research on you in the past couple of weeks and your policy positions leading up to this interview. I liked a lot of what I saw, man. For instance, you talk about 2 things that I find super important in today's society, and the first being the for-profit healthcare system. I myself lost a loved one, my stepmother, to multiple sclerosis, and I know you had a personal experience with your father and MS as well. Can you tell us how your experiences with the healthcare system? Mine were not great. I had some really critical things to say about the healthcare system and my stepmother. Tell us about how that has affected your opinions on the healthcare system, and what do you think we can improve about our current system?
Oh my gosh. Our healthcare system is one of the biggest embarrassments that I have about being an American. I have a fundamental belief that healthcare is a human right. I don't believe that it should be attached to your job. I believe that every human being on this planet, and especially in our country, we have the money to drop bombs and to arm countries and constantly wage, endless conflict. We need to have the money to take care of folks, to give them the basic dignity to get cancer treatments, to be able to afford their multiple sclerosis medications, to treat whatever it is. Our healthcare system is so broken because of the profit element being attached to it. 70% of all the costs of healthcare are administrative costs. We have offices full of administrative folks, and that's where all the money's being bled to. We need a single payer healthcare system. There is no doubt in my mind that until you detach the profit element from it, nothing is going to get fixed. Here in Colorado, they're actually working on a ballot initiative next year. I think it'll either go on this year, and it's going to be to create a single payer healthcare system here in Colorado to kind of lead the way, to show the rest of the country, look, it can be done. Don't let them feed you the crap that they're feeding you. I just remember back to when I was a kid. I always tell people, like, we were living the American dream. We had a small little half a double home, but we had everything that we needed. We were happy. When I was 5 and my dad got MS and he completely lost his ability to be able to provide for his family, that American dream turned into the American nightmare. And I remember having to grow up really, really quickly because we didn't have health care. We went 2 years without any income. We had to survive off of food stamps. The Medicaid that we received was terrible. They didn't treat my father at all in the beginning. They almost looked down on him because he didn't have
Mm-hmm.
private health insurance. That is something that really stuck with me forever. And to be honest, I've had quite a few health issues in my life. I've struggled with chronic pain my entire life. I've struggled with chronic stomach issues. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars to get little to no relief. I see like doctors as like corporate transactions. You go in, they don't really listen to what you're saying. They write you a prescription. It ends up making your problem worse, and you come back. And there's like this connectedness between the for-profit healthcare industry and the big pharmaceutical corporations. They're almost like a symbiont circle. They don't actually focus on uh, improving your health. They like maintain the balance between sickness and health because they don't want you to be dead because you're not profitable, but they don't want you to be fully healthy because you're not profitable. So I believe that our entire society and system is a trap to keep us eating garbage, to keep us feeling like garbage, so that we're constantly feeding that for-profit healthcare machine. I can tell you that if I make it to Washington, I will make it my mission to advocate, to spread that mission to not just liberals and progressives, but to show conservative people, because they're suffering too. They might be conditioned to believe that it's socialism to transition to single payer system, but they would benefit from it so much. I can't tell you the conservative people that I've met that are living in apartments and trailer parks that can't afford their diabetic medication or can't afford to, their son's seizure medication. Like, we need to address that from a holistic point. And it's a disgrace to America that we're in 2024 and that our healthcare system is the way that it is. It's the laughing stock of the world, and if I could change one thing from getting elected to Congress, it would be our healthcare system, a complete overhaul.
Yeah, I can tell you, I talk to Canadians all the time on stream, on videos. They laugh at me. They make fun of me and my healthcare system constantly. That's like the one thing
I'm
Canadians
sure.
are, they always just, how's it going down there with your healthcare system? If there's one thing they can rub in our faces over and over again. And the funny thing about that is when you talk to anybody on the conservative side, they constantly say Canadians aren't happy with their healthcare system. I have
Sure.
never spoken to one Canadian. This is also another one of these funny things because I speak to a lot of Canadians. I talk to people all over the world by being a YouTube streamer. And I can tell you this right now. Once again, I have never spoken to a Canadian person that's unhappy with their healthcare system. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but they
Yeah.
are a lot happier with what's going on with their system than any of our people. Like you said, when you pointed out the conservatives, they're conditioned to believe that when you hear the word socialism, like you must immediately react negatively to anything to do with it. And I'm just going to continue to put this out there to everybody that's listening, is that when we define things, we feel like we're in control. When we put a label on things, we feel like we're in control. Nothing rests within the boundaries of these definitions that we put on them. When we look at our government, I just had a girl on stream just a couple nights ago say, is America a democracy or a republic? And said, there's a girl, her name is Leisha Miller. She makes videos. She has a great video on that. America is neither a democracy or a republic. It's a little bit of both. And it's a little bit of socialism, and it's a little bit of this, and it's a little bit of that. And when you really get into like trying to actually define what America's government system is, you find that it's almost impossible to peg it down, because definitions are just a way to keep us all arguing about BS. At the end of the day, it should be what is good for the American people, regardless of where it came from. And what we have right now, and even some people on the left, I have arguments with people on the left as well about, like, every politician is shady, every politician is this or that, and I like to point out, I go, well, that's not true. Let's talk about some of the good things that people do, and once again, it's because we've defined being a politician as being, you have to be this bad person to be a politician. That's why I'm having this conversation with yourself, and why I'm reaching out to so many politicians right now. I want to show people that just because we have this idea, we've defined these things as being something, that doesn't make it true. You have to get into the nuance. You have to ask people who they really are. You have a history. You have things that have made you who you are as a person, that has made you feel like you want to do something for America, that you want to change things. You want to change the healthcare system. And it's not because somebody's in your pocket. It's because something that has happened to you in your history, in your family, has changed the way that you have perceived healthcare in our system. And the same thing goes for me. I've seen it throughout my life. I've been on Medicare or Medi-Cal. I've witnessed my mom being fed just pills after pills after pills to because they want her. That's where they make their money, and they don't want to deal with her. They don't want to help her. Our system of healthcare is broken. And when we involve profit in any of these things, my two biggest things is profit in healthcare and profit in the prison system. We start to see that when money gets involved, values and morals go out the window. And we got to figure out a way to get away from that. So the second part of this is that I do take great umbrage with how our current prison system works. I think we take people that are experiencing struggles with addiction, and then we place them in jails with actual criminals. And being where I come from, I saw a lot of this, which it just results in them becoming less likely to find any type of work when they get out. It also connects them with a worse element. I have, unfortunately, the experience of where I grew up and seeing people go into jail and come out worse than when they went in. Luckily, we're getting to a point with like issues like marijuana where you're not seeing those people being put in the prison system anymore. But my sister was addicted to crystal methamphetamine. I have seen countless people in my life from where I grew up fall victim to addiction. And then I've seen it in my life as a middle class person as well when it comes to things like struggles with alcohol addiction. My question to you, we do have a it's an incredibly important problem with fentanyl and opioids in our country. What would you do to combat the drug problem America is facing? And since I know you've had some struggles with addiction, which you're very open about, how have your battles with addiction affected your opinions on this issue?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So our drug laws are archaic. They're rooted in years and years and generations of propaganda, of misinformation. What we've essentially done is given the government authority to regulate what substances you can and cannot put into your own body. And that's a whole nother issue in itself. But if you take the opioid crisis and you actually look at why do we have an opioid crisis? Well, as somebody who's experienced that, somebody who's shook an opioid addiction, who's spent time in county prison for an opioid addiction, who's watched buried numerous friends and family members throughout the years, I can tell you that we all started out as good, innocent people. The pharmaceutical industry flooded the streets with oxycodone and Percocet and Vicodin in the mid-1990s to the early 2000s, and they created one of the largest opioid epidemics that our country has ever seen. It's only gotten worse because the fentanyl is coming in through ports of entry and through our porous borders. But I think in order to address the issue, you have to look at what is actually going on. And you have to address the fact that America has essentially created the largest, most thriving global black market. I believe what I would do and something that I would advocate for is the complete decriminalization of all drugs, top to bottom. I have a fundamental belief that addiction is not a crime. I know through personal experience that nobody gets better in a jail cell. I can reiterate everything that you said, that going into a county prison for drug possessory charges, being treated as less than a human being, eating food that wouldn't be edible to a dog, or a street animal, that is not going to get people better. So we need to look at it and say we've been criminalizing drugs and kicking in people's doors and locking them in prison for 100 years now. And what did it do? Drugs are available on every street corner. They're all over every city. In fact, they can't even keep drugs out of jail. I was very discouraged when I went to county prison and thought, I'm going to finally I'm going to use this time to detox and get my life straight. And I looked around me and there's people, snorting oxycodones next to me, and the guards were smuggling jails into prison. So if we cannot keep drugs out of society, we can't keep drugs out of jail, what good is turning our entire society into a prison? And that's something that I can't get behind. We need to address that. The drug dealers with college degrees have accelerated this crisis, and they're the big pharmaceutical manufacturers that misled Americans, that peddled it to every street corner, that pushed it to every pharmaceutical rep, to every doctor. We need to look at the doctors that have prescribed it over the years. We just have to completely revamp that just say no drug era, the Reagan and Nixon era of the war on drugs. It needs dismantled. And again, we can circle back to the fact that there's profit behind it. People don't realize this, that private prisons exist that treat human beings as stock. Every individual that's in that prison is making money for somebody else. My own personal experience dealing with that has completely impacted and shaped my vision for how I would handle this. Like I said, I went to prison over a decade ago for being caught with opioids 2 times. I didn't hurt anybody. I wasn't driving under the influence. That was it. I was dealing with an addiction. I got ripped away from my family. I got thrown into a jail cell. I had to fight for survival oftentimes in there. I went weeks and weeks without eating because the food was so inedible. There was poor conditions where there were bed bugs and people getting all types of infections and sickness spreading throughout it. They wouldn't give you your soap or your toothpaste. I just remember being treated as less than a human being and how that made me feel. And I looked around and I started to get to know all these people in there, because that's all you can do is pass the time. And I realized, oh my gosh, these people are good people. Their parent died when they were young. They were raped. They were, had all kinds of traumatic experiences that drove them down this way. And there is no correction. Our prisons are called correctional facilities. There's not an ounce of correction within them. There's not. And so I think that we just need to change the conversation here in America and stop talking about, this program and that program. No, we need to advocate for complete decriminalization. We need to adopt the Portugal method for how we handle drugs. And we need to give people treatment in lieu of prison time, because all we're doing is feeding that cycle over and over and over again and not making any progress. And again, this is something that I'm really passionate about, and I will continue to spearhead in my political career.
Nice. Yeah, I think that we became a country of punishment and not incentivization. I think that we've really focused on the negative portion of drug use rather than on the humanization of who these people are. And I stand with you when you say to legalize all drugs top to bottom, because there has been countless studies, there's countless examples of people being educated, whether it's when you look at abortion, when abortion was no longer illegal, when it was a thing of education. You saw abortions after the initial spike, which is because it was legalized and people that were getting them illegally, that
Sure.
wasn't on the record, like people misunderstand that. It dropped, and it continued to drop. Women's their involvement in the economy skyrocketed. Everything got better. And when you look at like something like drug use, and you think, oh, well, we just keep punishing people and doing the same thing over and over again, it's insanity. You're not educating these people. You've been to prison. I have lots of friends that have been, and those people can all tell you there was nothing positive about that experience. They didn't gain anything from that experience. And when you come out of it and all you've done has been punished and you've never been incentivized, then you don't have a reason. There's no reward. There's no carrot on the stick. So I really believe education is the way. I do it my own with my 2 kids. I have 2 kids as well. I say to my kids, these are my experiences with life, and this is why you shouldn't do these things. I don't tell them crack cocaine is a horrible feeling. The first time you do crack cocaine, it's an amazing experience. I'm like, do you think people go back to it because the first time they did it was terrible? No,
Sure.
It's because it's an addicting feeling. And so I tell my children, I say, hey, it feels great, but this is where it's going to take you in life. This is where you're going to end up. This is the example of what happens when you do hard drugs. And I'm capable of doing that because of my personal experiences. But there's a lot of people that don't have my personal experience. And those people are going to need education. Those people are going to need the ability for the rest of society to provide them with utilities to speak to children, for it to be spoke about in schools in a way that isn't just, it's bad, don't do it. Like we've tried that with religion, we've tried that with abstinence. None of these scenarios have worked out. Every one of them have ended with bad things happening because we choose not to talk about it, because we just want to tell people you shouldn't do it because it's bad. I heard from a friend of mine, and I haven't looked into this, but it sounded like a great scenario. I'm not sure where he was talking about it, but about a facility that was shut down. I want to say in D.C., but the program, and it was, as far as I understand it, was shut down by conservatives because they didn't like it, was that there was a program where drug users were going to get a fix, but it was a fix that did not allow them to get high, but instead keep them from getting sick. And while they were there was Job Corps people, there was drug counseling people, there was family counseling people, all available to these addicts. So when they walked through the door, they got their fix. They're no longer, so strung out that they need it so bad they're not listening to what anybody's saying. It's the most important thing in their life. That's what people don't understand about addiction. Is it's not something where you're just like, whatever. I could do all these other things, but I choose to do drugs. No, doing that drug at that time is the most important thing in that person's life. So you give them enough to keep them from being sick and thinking about it, and then you provide them with the ability to find resources right there to allow them to go out in the world and be a participant of our great country. And his point was that it made it boring for these people. They weren't getting the high, so they couldn't just go and have a great time. Now they were just getting enough to stay not sick, and they went, well, I need something to do now. So they went and looked for jobs. So they went and tried to fix their families. So they went and tried to fix their own mental health and the issues that you brought up about, people that were molested as children that turned to drugs later in their life. This is very important, and I hope to see something along these lines discussed. I don't know that that's the answer, but I'd like to see these types of things discussed. I'm going to let you go, but I want to ask you the two questions I like to ask every politician I talk to. So we obviously live in an extremely polarized political environment. I think people have really lost the ability to kind of see the good things in the people that they disagree with. I tell people all the time, if you find that you have no disagreement with somebody, I'm looking at all the Trump supporters right now, you're in a cult. If a person does nothing that you disagree with or says nothing you disagree with, you're part of a cult. I like Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden has done great things for this country since he became the president of the United States of America. I set the bar pretty low, and he exceeded by leaps and bounds. I disagree with some of the things he does, and I'm happy to discuss those things with people. But with that being said, who are two people on the other side of the aisle that you would work with, and why would you like to work with them?
That's a really interesting question, and one that I've never actually been asked before. So I'm going to start it with a political non-answer and then circle back. I am known to buck my own party whenever I need to. I don't march in lockstep with any particular party or ideology. I hold my values high and I run towards them. I don't run away from them. I don't care whether somebody's a conservative, a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a libertarian. We have mutual ideas and concepts that we can discuss and meet middle ground. I think that our country has pushed us into this type of toxic polarity, like you mentioned earlier, where it's either us against them. I can't support this policy because you're a Republican, even though it's good. I can't support this policy because you're a Democrat, even though that it's good. I don't believe in that whatsoever. I don't believe that I genuinely have two people on the other side of the aisle that I would work with in Congress, but I could tell you that I would continue to uphold my label as an unconventional Democrat. I plan to introduce legislation and send out memos to everybody on the other side of the aisle and hope that we can meet up for lunch and talk about these ideas and how to actually advance things in Congress. I will never shy away from bipartisan legislation. I don't support bipartisanship just for the sake of saying, oh, hey, look, I'm bipartisan. We have to actually believe in what we're doing. And there's no boundaries to me. I will work with anybody to achieve things that'll benefit my state, my country, my community. But I don't have it narrowed down to one or two people specifically that I would like to work with. I just hope that I hope I can find more than one or two people to hold hands with and introduce legislation that'll actually benefit Americans and hopefully break into some of that toxicity that we've seen in our political system.
Cool. I think there's a couple of people on the right now that are attempting to buck the insanity of their party.
I think so.
And I want to be able to support those people. I want, I think that the viewpoints, the varied viewpoints of different people with different values is incredibly important to who we are as Americans, and obviously even on a bigger scale, who we are as a human race in this world. I think that we need to get to a point where we can accept that we don't all have the same values, but we do have the same goal, and that's happiness. That's to live a life that we all can appreciate, and whether you're religious or not, if this is the one life that you get as this person, then it should be the best life you get. And that's why I'm a progressive. Is I think that I will not sacrifice the values of progress, so that way others can feel comfortable, with their traditional values. But I don't always think that progress has to be in a way leaving those people behind. I think there's certain things that you just can't stand on the side of the train when it's leaving the station and just complain. The train's leaving without you. But you can get on the train and we can discuss whether or not you like being on the train. Like that's something that I think we can do. So I like hearing that you say you're going to work with people, because I think the opinion on the right now is no, we're not going to work with them. And
I agree.
You can't do that. Nothing is going to come to a rewarding end by saying, I will not work with, and to be honest, 60% of the country, if not 70, is the Democrats.
Yeah.
You can't say you're not going to work with the other side and tell your constituents the way to the promised land is for us all to act like a bunch of bad children and just be loud and angry until they do what we want them to do. It's not a solution. My other important question is, obviously I pointed out money in healthcare, money in the prison system, money in politics. There's one thing when I hear Cenk Uygur from TYT, I think it's terrible that he's trying to run right now. But
Likewise,
if there's one thing I agree with him on, it is that money in politics is the number one issue for American democracy. When you have people like the NRA lobbying against common sense gun laws, or you have huge oil companies lobbying against green energy, I don't see any way to move forward in progress. Whether it's money in healthcare, money in the prison system, or money in politics, it seems like the one issue we keep coming back to is money. So how do we get money out of politics and put the power back in the hands of your everyday American?
the $1 million question. Yeah, it can all be traced back to money. First of all, you can end Citizens United. Corporations should have no ability to be able to contribute to politicians. That is not the way America was intended to work. I think that would be an important first step. But I think you're also going to have to pass some type of holistic anti-corruption reform, because people get to Congress and they're taking back-end deals all the time from oil and gas companies, big pharmaceutical companies, you name it. And I think that needs to be highlighted and prohibited. We need to attach a 25-year federal prison sentence to anybody who's taken money on the back end like that. You need to stop members of Congress from being able to trade stocks and cryptocurrencies, with access to insider, confidential information. I don't know if we can ever fully remove money from politics, but I think just having a conversation about it and highlighting it to the American people, how damaging to our democracy it is, how much power these corporations have. A lot of people don't even know that Citizens United said that corporations are people, and they should have every right to be able to contribute to politicians. That's why our democracy is so broken. I mean, you can take someone like Lauren Boebert, for example, who essentially met Ted Cruz before she even ran for office. And I'm pretty sure they worked something out on the back end, because I'd have to look into what the numbers are, but I think that her husband got a $500,000 a year salary as an oil and gas consultant with no oil and gas experience in his life. That right there is the epitome of corruption. That shows exactly why our institutions are so corrupted. But I think that we also have to recognize that, like, until we get more working class people like myself elected to Congress, the money is going to continue to dominate, because so many people want to run for Congress for those back end deals, for the cushy $175,000 a year taxpayer funded salary and lifetime, benefits and pension. We should revoke the congressional pension. You don't deserve a pension because the American workers aren't getting a pension. You should not have lifetime access to health care because Americans aren't getting that. And I'm not even sure if you should make $175,000 a year when the federal minimum wage has been stagnant for as long as it has. So I think that we really just need to highlight where people are getting their money from. And I think that we need to publicize campaign finance reports. I think that people need to wear their corporate badges. Who are you getting funded from? Disclose it to the American people. You shouldn't be able to cover up all this funding that you're getting on the back end. And I think that the solution is just conversation, public education, and really pushing back against some of these powerful institutions that have created a system of government that serves them and not the people.
It's a pretty good start, in my opinion. I think that the funny thing about Lauren Boebert and Ted Cruz, it's like the producer found his face at a party, just put a beat behind it and give it some choreography.
Exactly.
It's sad. It's sad that that's where we're at. But and I like that you're running, man. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I find you to be a very intelligent person. I find you to be very well educated on the issues, and I think that when you see people like Boebert and MTG and Santos and all of them, you start to see that these people, they had an idea. I mean, Boebert and MTG had an idea, but the constituents, they had an idea. They wanted to see, even with Trump, I said it about Trump in 2016. I said, I understand why you guys voted for him. I didn't. I don't want to.
Sure.
But I see why you voted for him. Because you wanted so bad somebody other than the politicians in there. You wanted anybody that was different, that you're willing to take Donald Trump. And they did the same thing with MTG. They did the same thing with George Santos. They did the same thing with Lauren Boebert. So I don't fault them for that. But I think, in fact, I fault MTG and those people for taking advantage of. But I do think that there's something to that when I see people like yourself getting involved in politics and wanting to use your life experience to motivate yourself to achieve things that potentially you didn't have, but you can give to your kids. Thinking about my children and where they're going to go and their future is incredibly important to me. And that's why I've gotten involved in doing these things. And I tell all my friends that are single when they're like, why do you care about politics? I'm like, it's because you don't have children. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? And we can move on from this conversation.
You got it. So if you go to Padora, that's Padora for Congress.com. That'll be the best way to sign up, stay engaged, learn more about our campaign. But I'm also on every social media platform. You can head over to TikTok, to Twitter. You can head over to Facebook, to Instagram. We're very, very active, and we're pushing our messaging nationally and throughout all of Eastern Colorado. And I hope that people will sign up and learn more about what we're doing here, because as an unconventional Democrat, as someone who believes in the populism that you kind of, just leaned into, our political system's broken. We don't have people with working class backgrounds. People want political outsiders. People want people that aren't a part of the establishment, and that's really what our campaign is all about. We're also just not about being as crazy as Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert. So I think people will be excited to see the other end of the spectrum.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Extremism on the right is becoming a bigger and bigger issue by the day. If you don't believe me, check out this video about Tim Walberg going over to Uganda and speaking in support of the Anti-Homosexuality Act of 2023. Thanks a lot for watching, and remember, get educated and get out and vote.